Welcome to Mathenatic. This is our last video on our revision on financial mathematics for grade 12. And in this video, we focus on the sinking fund. So let us jump into this question. It says, a small business purchases a photocopy machine for 200,000 Rand. The machine depreciates at 20% per annum on reducing balance. So that means if we are reducing balance, it's the formula for depreciation that looks like compound interest. The small business wants to buy a new machine in 5 years' time. They project that a new machine cost will escalate at 16% per annum. The old machine will be sold at scrap value after the 5 years. A sinking fund is set up immediately to save up for the new machine. The business will pay equal monthly payments into the fund that earns an interest rate of 18% compounded monthly. The first question says, determine the scrap value of the old machine. Now the word scrap value represents or is referring to the depreciated value. So we take the 200,000 Rand, which we have for the machine, and we plug it into our equation for reduced balance depreciation. So the I value here is 0.2 because in the information they say the machine depreciates at 20% per annum. So that is the 0.2, and we are working out the value of the machine in 5 years' time. So always for depreciation, we'll work in years. We will never have a scenario where we need to work it out per month. So depreciation is always a yearly amount, and the N value is always yearly as well. So when you plug it into your calculator, you get 65,536 Rand is the value of the old machine. The second question says, find the cost of the new machine in 5 years' time. So let us go back into our information. So if you like, you can always work through or scratch out the information you've already used. So they said that they project that a new machine will escalate at 16% per annum. All right? So in 5 years' time, this is an inflation rate that we need to apply. So the machine is 200,000 Rand, and if a new machine's price escalates at 16% per annum, we can use our formula for compound interest to find the new value or the projected value of the new machine. So if we plug this information into our formula for a compound interest rate, then we find that the price or the cost of the new machine is 420,068 Rand and 33 cents. The third question is, what is the amount required in the sinking fund? So what happens in a sinking fund? It's some sort of fund that we will have in future, and the amount required is the cost of the new machine minus the scrap value of the old machine. So the future value or the sinking fund's value is 420,000 Rand minus the 65,000 Rand. So it's 354,532 Rand and 33 cents. What I want you to notice is that the question leads us into solving the problem. So the fourth question says, find the equal monthly payments made into the fund. So we know that the value of the fund is this 354,000 Rand. And this fund would be somewhere in the future. So we are going to use the future value annuity from our formula sheet. So the F value is our answer that we have found in our previous question. The X value is what we want to calculate. And what I want you to notice that this is in 5 years' time. So N is 12 times 5, which is 60. But you see here we have 61 because the question said payments are made immediately. So let me show you that again. If we go into reading the question, it says a sinking fund is set up and payments are made or set up immediately. So the moment you read the word immediately, it means this fund is starting at time 0. And that will create one extra payment that we are making. So that is why we have 61 payments instead of just 60. And I hope from the previous videos you are now comfortable with manipulating this equation in order to solve for x. So the size of the payments of our sinking fund is 3,593 Rand and 55 cents. And it's the last question that normally catches students out. And this is where people get tired and they give up. So I mark this question as level 4. So in your papers, in paper 1, you get level 1, level 2, level 3, and level 4 questions. And your paper is split into these types of questions. A level 4 question means it is a problem-solving question, and normally the one that students struggle with or they tend to leave out. But let's work through it. It says, suppose that the business decides to service the machine at the end of each year for the period of 5 years. 3,000 Rand will be withdrawn from the sinking fund at the end of the year, starting 1 year after the original machine was bought. The first question here says, calculate the reduced value of the sinking fund at the end of 5 years due to withdrawals. And the second question says, calculate the increased monthly payment into the sinking fund to yield the original amount. So this is what is happening. Here we have the sinking fund's timeline. And at the end of every year, we will withdraw 3,000 Rand from that account. Now, some students would say, well, we are making 5 withdrawals, so it will be 3,000 times 5, which is 15,000 Rand. But that's not true, because remember, part of the sinking fund, these values that we are withdrawing, actually could have earned interest up until the end of this period. So what I'm doing is I'm working out the impact of each of these payments up until the end of that period. So you can see the first withdrawal of 3,000 Rand could have earned another 48 payments of interest. And notice now the end that I'm working with is 60 and not 61. So 61 was the original total amount, but this 3,000 Rand would have been in the account for another 48 payments. So I add 48 payments or 48 months of interest. The second 3,000 Rand that we are withdrawing would have been in the account for another 36 payments. So the amount of interest that we could have earned is for 36 payments. The third one would be in the account or would have been in the account for another 24 payments or 2 years. So that's the amount of interest that we are losing. The fourth payment would be in the account for another year or 12 payments. And the last payment that we are withdrawing doesn't earn any interest because that's the maturity. So that's the day in which the sinking fund would pay out. So there's no interest that we are losing on that last withdrawal. So when we add all of these values up, we're actually losing around 22,000 Rand of interest on our sinking fund and not just the 15,000 Rand. So we need to take into account the value of the interest that we are losing. So the reduced sinking fund is the value of the sinking fund minus the interest and the withdrawals that we are losing. So the reduced value of our sinking fund is only 332,000 Rand. Now the second question says, calculate the increased payments into the sinking fund to give us back to the original amount. So instead of withdrawing this money, we need to find a way to make up the difference. So can you see I'm changing the future value by adding the impact of that 22,000 Rand that we are losing because of the withdrawals. So I need to make space for an extra 22,000 Rand. Now, the end value is still 61 and not 60. All right, so it's like the previous question. And now we simply solve for x as we have done before. So we are adding the impact of our withdrawals, and the new increased payment is 3,817 Rand and 90 cents. Thank you for watching. Support us by liking and subscribing to Mathenatic. Check out our Digistore for math study notes, with free downloads for statistics and financial math. Follow the link in the video description.